Well, thank you very much, Mayor Stanton. That was very gracious. You know, I've had the pleasure of working with the mayor over the past year. I have to say, this is a mayor who is steadfast in his commitment and his passion to move this region forward into the future. And you heard that this morning. I really admire that. It is wonderful to be back here in Phoenix, to talk about global cities and how metro areas can position their economies for high quality growth and opportunity. We are joined today not just by the leaders in the greater Phoenix metro area, but also by leaders in about a dozen other metropolitan areas across the United States, like Louisville, Milwaukee, Atlanta, who share Phoenix's commitment to embrace global trade as a pillar of economic growth. For the past 3 years, the Brookings Metropolitan Program has been boringly consistent about what the economic challenges are that face this country. Now, at the most basic level, the U.S. needs more jobs, more than 7 million by one estimate, to recover the jobs lost during the downturn and to keep pace with new entrants into the labor market. But pure job growth, we need to go beyond that. We also need better jobs to grow wages and incomes for lower and middle class workers and reverse the troubling rise of inequality. In fact, the bottom 99% of earners have essentially seen no growth in income since the recession, while the top 1% has enjoyed a 31% growth in income. Now, there's no doubt there's not an easy fix to these twin goals, but what we know is clear. We do need to purposely restructure our economy from one focused on local consumption and real estate to one really focused on the drivers of the future economy, in innovation and trade, in skills, in infrastructure. So today, to set up this program, I do want to make 3 points. First, in the aftermath of the Great Recession, the U.S. must recognize the opportunities presented by global demand and urbanization. To do so, we must export more and waste less, innovate in what matters, produce and deploy more of what we want to invent, and ensure that the economy works for working families. Second, our cities and metropolitan areas are the engines of the global economy, and they are the centers of trade and commerce. They produce the bulk of the advanced goods and services that we sell abroad. They attract the majority of foreign investment in our markets, and they are the logistics hubs of the global trading system. And finally, metro areas with their states are leading the nation's path towards greater global engagement, in doing so in new ways, in practice, in policy, in the formation of global trade partnerships. So let me begin with why it's really important to engage globally. First, the locus of economic power in the world is shifting. Now, this chart shows that in 2013, the U.S. actually emerged from the global recession rather strong, retaining about its 1/5 of the share of the world economy. But IMF predicts that shift is going to flip over the coming years, with the U.S. share of global GDP forecasted to decline, while the big nations of Brazil, India, and China will surpass that and make up 1/4 of world economic output. Now, the rise of the BRICS reflects the rise of metros. For the first time in recorded history, more than half of the world's urban population now lives in cities and metropolitan areas, and that is predicted to increase to over 60% by 2030. Now, rising nations and their rapidly growing metro areas are now driving global demand. The Asia-Pacific region's share of the global middle class, for example, will increase from 28% of the global trade output in 2009 to now 2/3 of the global total by 2030. Meanwhile, the U.S. share of middle-class consumption is going to drop from 18% to just 7%. So this shift means there will be more customers for U.S.-made goods and services, and we are meeting that global demand, selling advanced goods and services to nations like China, Korea, and India, including products like semiconductors, aerospace and telecommunications products, and business and professional services. And the demand for those products are continuing to grow. Now, the shift, though, doesn't just benefit consumer goods. Urbanizing nations face massive environmental challenges, from transportation and air pollution to energy efficiency and waste disposal. So inventing and deploying the technologies and services to make our cities sustainable could be one of America's greatest global contributions in this global age. Metropolitan areas like Portland, institutions within Greater Phoenix are all purposely developing the expertise to meet this demand. Now, global trade also offers a path to more jobs and better jobs. Every $1 billion in increase in exports supports approximately 5,600 jobs, a figure that actually has been revised upward to reflect the rise in services exports. And these are quality jobs. They pay workers more, and they're more likely to provide health and retirement benefits. Yet, despite all these benefits of exporting, we actually trail our competitors on export performance. In 2010, exports made up only 13% of the U.S. economy, compared to much higher shares among our trade partners like Canada and Japan. And this opportunity, therefore, begs the question, can we get back into the export game? The answer, yes, if we are intentional about it. For all the talk of a post-industrial economy, the U.S. remains a manufacturing powerhouse. It exports $944 billion in manufactured goods in 2010. This made the U.S. the third largest manufacturing exporter in the world, behind China and Germany. But this is not just about the advanced manufacturing of high-value goods. America is also the #1 exporter of private services in the world, exporting $518 billion in services in 2010, which gave us a $160 billion trade surplus in services. And in this global age, we also co-produce goods through international supply chains. And the U.S. benefits from our strategic location with strong linkages with Canada and Mexico. So for every $100 in value in final goods that the United States imports from Mexico, $40 of that import is U.S.-made content. From Canada, the U.S. share is $25. Meanwhile, the proportion of U.S. content from Chinese and EU imports are much lower. Thus, that means we are at the heart of a highly integrated production platform here in North America. And we will hear more from Secretary Bill Daley and from Ambassador Hills about the importance and benefits of NAFTA and other trade pacts. But the bottom line here is America's potential for global engagement is hidden in plain sight. So, can we fully realize the potential for global engagement and engage these global markets? We think the answer is yes. Now, our global economic ties are anchored by a set of advanced industries and supported by the building blocks of modern economies, which are innovation, human capital, and infrastructure. Now, advanced industries are those high-value R&D intensive industries that concentrate the nation's science, technology, engineering, math, and computer science workers. This is the sector that creates technology and deploys it across industries and across the economy. And these include advanced manufacturing, from pharmaceuticals and medical equipment to aerospace and motor vehicles. They also include high-value services like software, computer system designs, telecom. And these are often highly linked with production. In fact, advanced industries are often at the nexus of the physical and the digital, where modern gadgets, modern equipment now come with the technological services capabilities. And these advanced industries really punch above their weight on what matters. They do comprise just 7.4% of private sector employment in the United States, but they employ nearly 1 in 3 engineers and architects. They generate 2/3 of patents, and they invest 85% of the nation's private sector R&D. And advanced industries matter because they also are on the leading edge of innovation, therefore have really strong multiplier effects into the rest of the economy. They drive productivity in other sectors of the economy. They support long supply chains, and they stimulate, in turn, the local economy. Now, innovation is the historic fuel and catalyst for economic growth, and it powers the growth in these advanced industries. Now, while U.S. R&D expenditures grew faster than the United Kingdom, Japan, and France here in the United States between 2001 and 2011, we actually trail the growth rates of R&D from EU, Germany, South Korea, and China. So what that means is the federal entitlement obligations of the debt in the United States are essentially crowding out R&D investments in the U.S. and threatening the very public support of innovation, which has fueled this country's greatest technological discoveries. Now, excelling in advanced industries also required skilled labor, especially as the demographics continue to shift in the United States. Now, over the next several decades, African Americans and Hispanics will grow from about 25% to nearly 40% of the working age population. By all accounts, this is a demographic advantage. Yet we do need to do a better job of making sure that both Hispanics and African American workers are armed with the skills and education levels they need to contribute to the jobs and the advanced industries of the future. And finally, we must focus on our physical infrastructure, which connects people, goods, and ideas at home and with the rest of the world. Now, the movement of freight in the United States has been compromised in part by logistics networks that are clogged and fragmented. But our total infrastructure, from air to ports to digital connectivity, they remain underperforming. And one more thing. Americans just don't get out much. Only 28% of our population has a passport. And every time I look at this photo, I'm just grateful this guy doesn't have a hole in his sock. So here's my second proposition. Metros are at the centers of global trade and commerce. The 100 largest metropolitan areas are really at the heart of the American economy. After decades of growth, they take up about 12% of our land mass, but they harbor 2/3 of our population and generate 75% of our GDP. And metro areas are economic hubs linked by assets and workers in our cities, in our suburbs, in our exurbs, and in our rural areas. And they pack a powerful punch. Metro areas now generate the majority of GDP in 47 out of our 50 states, and Arizona is a quintessential metro state. Phoenix Mesa metro area alone houses 2/3 of our population and contributes nearly 3/4 of the GDP here. If you add in Tucson to the greater Phoenix metro area, together they house an additional 88% of the population and contribute more than 90% of the state's economy. So again, this is a truly urbanized state. Now, on exports, the top 100 metros really do dominate. In 2011, they produced an estimated 64% of U.S. exports, including a high share of services exports. The top 100 metros also produce the vast majority of goods and services in the advanced industries, like chemicals, like consulting and computers, which are consumed by markets in China, Brazil, and India. And the top 100 metros are logistics hubs, concentrating the movement of people and goods by air, rail, and sea. And the next economy, unlike the consumption economy we're trying to get away from, it is highly differentiated. So in a consumption economy, a Walmart outside of Cleveland is the same as a Walmart outside of Charlotte. Same design, same footprint, same goods. A housing division outside of Phoenix is the same as a housing division outside of Pittsburgh, although yours won't have snow in it. But what makes the Phoenix economy special or distinctive is different from what drives Cleveland or Charlotte or Pittsburgh's economy. Phoenix has a base of advanced industries in electronics and semiconductor manufacturing, aerospace and defense capabilities, in surveillance and cyber technologies. There's an emerging bio and life sciences sector here, centered around the Translational Genomics Research Institute and the Mayo Clinic. And the region is blessed with ASU, where we are today, with its research centers here and abroad, and other important higher education institutions that Mayor Stanton mentioned, including one of the largest community colleges in the country. Maricopa County Community College, which I learned last night, trains more than 265,000 students across 10 colleges and 2 skill centers. So there are tremendous assets here, one that the Phoenix area leaders are striving to leverage as they make the transition to the next economy. Now, as they do so, these leaders are wide-eyed about how they stack against other markets in the race for advanced industries and global competitiveness. So now we can arrive at the slide. On innovation and human capital, what this region faces are some challenges. Educational attainment trails the nation. STEM jobs are really at only the norm. And patenting rates ranks low at 76th out of 100 U.S. metros. Now, Phoenix is the 15th largest metro economy and the 15th largest exporter. But just 10.6% of this region's economy benefits from global exports, and that share has dropped over the last 10 years. Now, aerospace and semiconductor products leads your goods exports, but almost 40% of your exports come from services, which is higher than the national average, with finance as your largest services sector export. And this industry mix gives you a unique set of trading partners in North America. Now, Mayor Stanton talked this morning about his goal to boost exports in Mexico and in the larger NAFTA corridor, and he has good reason. In aerospace, for example, this region is tightly linked with Canada's aircraft manufacturing hubs of Montreal and Toronto, as well as Mexico's production hubs in Monterrey and Chihuahua. And finally, this region is an international freight and air hub. Now, Greater Phoenix moved about $201 billion in goods in 2011, slightly below the national average. But the goods you moved actually went predominantly first to China and then to the NAFTA corridor second and third. But your airports connected business and leisure travelers to your neighbors in Canada and Mexico, as well as to global metros like London. Now, to my final point, namely that as the economy becomes increasingly global, metros are driving innovation in practice, in policy, and in forging their own global trade networks. Now, setting and stewarding the platform for a strong export economy has traditionally been an exclusive role of the federal government, given its powers over trade, currency, export finance, and investments in innovation, human capital, and infrastructure. Yet, with the gridlock we're seeing in Washington, even the easy stuff has been extraordinarily difficult. So in this polarized environment, what we're seeing are metropolitan areas like Greater Phoenix and some of the other metro areas in this room that are stepping up and stepping into this void, reaching out to firms and creating an environment for productive, innovative, and global growth. Three things are happening. First, metropolitan areas are beginning to organize for trade. Now, what does this look like? Now, Phoenix is joining a select group of U.S. metros that are adopting proactive strategies to boost exports and investment, to create opportunities here at home. Now, the key steps to developing these strategies are fairly simple and straightforward. Each metropolis does a market assessment of their unique exports and economic profile, what their opportunities are, and they also conduct interviews and surveys of the firms in their market. And you will hear more from Barry Broom, the president of GPEC, later this morning, who will unveil the key findings from their global market assessment for the Phoenix region. Now, armed with this information, metros then set goals and objectives that build on their distinctive advantages, devise strategies to meet those goals, and then they establish metrics to gauge progress. Now, all of these efforts are undertaken by a consortium of corporate, government, university, civic institutions that cut across jurisdictional lines, that cut across sectors and disciplines, so they ultimately collaborate to compete globally. Now let's take a look at Portland and San Diego, who you will hear from later this morning at the panel. Now, Portland's plan calls for doubling exports in 5 years in the industries where they have competitive advantages. And its plan has 3 core strategies. This includes leveraging their primary exporting industry, which is computer and electronics, with initiatives to improve supply chain networks and freight flows there. They also have a We Build Green Cities marketing and outreach campaign to diversify their export base beyond computer electronics into an area where Greater Portland has a distinctive brand and niche, which is the sustainability and clean technology. Now, San Diego also has a targeted plan to boost trade and investment in key sectors. Their strategies include boosting exports in their 5 target industries, but they want to go beyond a focus on Mexico and their binational relationship there to also include the Pacific Rim, because that's where their companies are heading. They're also improving the continuum of services to help SMEs export, and they are investing in port and cyber infrastructure because cyber was identified as being critical to these tech-savvy firms. And second, metropolitan areas and their states are beginning to invest in what matters. On innovation, metros like Albany, Columbus, and Greenville, they are developing global R&D centers to move key industries up the value chain. So in Albany, the SUNY College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering collaborates on a nanotech research with companies like IBM, Intel, Symantec, Samsung, Toshiba, and together that has helped attract a $4.2 billion Global Foundries semiconductor manufacturing facility to the region. Now, in Columbus, an EWI lab, which came out of the Ohio State University, now develops and provides applied technology and training in manufacturing solutions like materials joining, like allied technologies, to local and global firms like GE. And in Greenville, the Clemson University International Center for Automotive Research, ICAR, houses automotive testing facilities and develops the skilled workers necessary to grow that region's auto cluster. And since 2003, ICAR has generated more than $230 million in investments and created more than 750 jobs in the region. And on human capital, New York City is working with the state on PTech, a STEM-focused 6-year high school project. By bringing together local schools, districts, community colleges, private businesses through a public-private partnership, these high schools are now able to offer work-based learning of opportunities for their students, a 6-year program so that every graduate walks out with not only a high school diploma, but also a 2-year degree, and the skills for entry-level positions at the partner firm after graduation. By next year, enrollment at the original location for PTech will total 400 students. And because of its success, Governor Cuomo recently announced a plan to extend that program statewide to include 16 new schools and 6,000 students. And on infrastructure, the San Antonio region has repurposed a decommissioned Air Force base into an aerospace industrial park and logistics hub that's home to Boeing, Lockheed, to strengthen the Metro's position along a key trade corridor. And finally, Metros must network globally. They are building their own binational trade relationships. What does that mean? So take Chicago and Mexico City. These are two metropolitan economies that are fundamentally linked by high shares of cultural and immigrant ties, strong economic ties, extensive trade in advanced industries like machinery manufacturing and pharmaceuticals, and by large volume of business and tourist travel between these two markets. Because of this, Mayor Manuel of Chicago and Mayor Mancera of Mexico City have now come together last fall to set a new standard for an international city-to-city economic cooperation. They signed the first ever Global Cities Economic Partnership. The goal of partnership, to mutually boost exports, FDI, entrepreneurship, and innovation in their shared industries over the next few years. And in many respects, these 21st century relationships and networks, they are not new. They harken back to the way the global economy evolved before the rise of nation states. So listen.
The foundation of cities has always been trade. 2,000 years ago, the Silk Road linked cities from China to the Roman Empire. The world is now being remade as a network of globalizing metros that trade together based on distinctive clusters of firms, specialized expertise, and cultural affinity. San Jose, Bangalore, and Seoul are technology hubs. Portland, Copenhagen, and Curitiba focus on green industry. Detroit, Stuttgart, Monterrey, and Nagoya are linked by manufacturing. Metros that connect by trade grow and prosper together. So get a passport, find your trading partners, travel the new Silk Road.
So let me close with this. Phoenix, with the other metropolitan areas in the Global Cities Exchange, are at the vanguard of regions that are reorienting their economies for high-value growth. This will require a massive education and culture shift within firms, within institutions, within our leaders to think and act anew about global opportunities. While this will require hard work, the reward is shared prosperity, in increased incomes for firms and industries, in greater tax revenues for the state and municipalities, and in better jobs for workers. You've all made the commitment to be a global city. So let's turn that commitment to collective action and real results. Thank you.